Welcome to goldenblack.com's Saturday Simulcast. I think it's the first time we've had the whole band together in a while, which is nice, with Tom Dienhart and Brian Neubert joining me, Alan Karpick, goldenblack.com. I want to thank the Union Club Hotel. Brian says it well in his stuff. You know, if they had, where every place he goes, they said if they had hotel, Union Club there, he'd stay there.
And
Well,
why
they
don't
do
they?
have. And why don't they? I get that. We appreciate Vicky and the whole gang there. I was there, not at the hotel, but had a couple meetings this week at Leaps for coffee. You can also, by the way, they are doing a promotion to vote for the Union Club as one of the top hotels in the Marriott program. So make sure you get a chance to do that if you're interested in supporting them. The restaurant's great, obviously the 811, but also the Boiler Up Bar and Leaps Coffee. Even Mr. Dienhart is a coffee connoisseur. He might like that stuff as well. So I know he does, but we appreciate them very much. And today, 3 days before the Christmas Day, and obviously a big game last night, and a big game, at least in terms of 43-point win for Purdue. But Brian, you've outlined it well in your rap video and your drive home podcast. But you know, looking at it, and I don't know where
Also,
you are.
we write
Yes,
stuff on our website too, by the
you
way,
do, and you wrote the takeaways with the rap video, which was
making sure
very good.
people know that.
And Mike Carmen also wrote something.
Mhm.
And while we're at it, too, yes, you can still subscribe. We still have specials going on. We would like you to do that. We've had a very good response to the holiday program, and there are still special offers on there to subscribe. You can get gift subscriptions as well. So while you're at it, think about that. But no, Brian, you know, the things that you wrote and also talked about last night. I thought one of the things that was good is that Purdue's attention to detail, only 9 turnovers in a game that was a little, you know, was a little scraggly at times, but also fun to watch, with 13 dunks, I think, all told. And Will Berg, the most productive player in Purdue history, and is so far in terms of maybe not quite, but he's been unbelievable. But just now, the day after, and I know you're working on your Pond Further review if it's not posted, but what do you see after 12, 14 hours after this game's been over?
Well, it's kind of one of those games where it would be human nature just to phone it in, and you know, come out really rough around the edges and,
Yeah.
struggle longer than the imbalance, the competitive imbalance between the two teams would suggest you should struggle. You saw what happened to Indiana earlier in the week against Morehead State. You saw what happened to Maryland that same night against Nicholls State, both home games, both bye games that you were basically paying for a win. And both of those teams had to fight like hell to win those games. Indiana came down to the final possession with Morehead State, and I think Purdue's graduated out of that. I think they're too good. I think their winning infrastructure is too overwhelming for that sort of thing to happen. But also, I think they're too mature. I think they're really thick-skinned because of what's happened to them the last couple of Marches. That I just think they're past that as a team, and their rallying cry, for lack of a better term, around these games is, "This is who we've lost to in March," and that may or may not even be true, because I don't think Jacksonville is that team. But whatever you got to do to stay up for these games, to be focused for these games. And I thought, there was a lull in the middle of
Yeah.
the first half, but I think Purdue came out
Mhm.
really sharp, and the final score ended up where you expected the final score to be. Now, part of that is the fact that, you bring in Will Berg, and he every single time he scores 8 points in 90 seconds. But um, that's beyond the point. I thought Purdue was pretty sharp yesterday. I thought it was everything you wanted to see and then some from Purdue.
Yeah, it very much the case on that front. I think you predicted 100 to 60 on your
No, no, no.
pregame.
I predicted 101 to 58, and it was
Oh, okay.
100 to
All right.
57. So I missed by 1 point on each side.
Mm.
But that's the great fallacy of all that. People think I put thought into that. I just pick numbers.
The
I just
line
say,
was 32 and a half. I looked that up for
I
the
have no
game.
idea what the line ever is. I don't take that into consideration. I just
Yeah, no, I know.
pick a couple numbers. I think Purdue's going to win this game by 40 points. So I assign them a number, and then I subtract 40 and assign that number to the other
Very
team.
scientific, very scientific.
I
Tom, you'll go ahead, Brian. I'm sorry, I
No,
didn't interrupt.
I think I've hit it on the pretty much on the screws twice, but it's not skill. As much as I'd like to take credit for that, it's not skill. It's simply luck.
Yeah. The whole notion of Tom and I were both in the stands last night, apparently sitting in the same section, but we didn't see each other, which is an indictment of some kind. Tom, we've been going to games over there, and one thing that's impressive to me is, and this is no surprise, I guess, because where Purdue basketball is, but the unbelievable crowds. I mean, that
Yeah.
used to be back in the day. I understand, even not all that long ago, that those holiday breaks, they'd have to go like crazy to sell these games out. Now it is wall to wall people. Your impressions, Tom, just on that, and how we're not covering it like Brian is, but certainly experiencing it. It is that level of maturity, and or not maturity, but the program's maturity has reached it's at a new level, and it continues to get better, it seems.
Yeah, boy, halcyon days. And yeah, we've seen some good basketball programs, some great support over the years, but you're right, Alan. Seems to be at a whole nother level this year. Having the National Player of the Year back, such a unique circumstance too, a real true superstar. And I think that's got to play a big part of it. And just a likable team too, right? A
Yeah,
likable
yeah,
coach.
no doubt.
And I think that plays in too. So yeah, and like I said, the environment over there, what they've done, the evolution of all that, what the people over in Mackey Arena and along Northwestern Avenue have done to really enhance the environment too, kind of takes things up to a whole nother level. When you look back over the last 20 or 30 years ago, what you said, the pep band.
Yeah,
That was
it's
basically it,
unbelievable.
right? But anyway, yeah, it's a lot of fun watching those guys. I remember Brian, I don't know, maybe we were just talking off the cuff one other point about the team this year. I think you remarked, Brian, that you said Braden Smith was probably the best point guard in the Big Ten, and I think your assessment's probably spot on. I mean, you did just again your thoughts on this team moving forward. There's been an awful lot of good, but I guess you always wonder if you had to maybe button up a couple issues on this team. What do you think it is the Boilers should still focus on and need to enhance here as we get deeper into winter?
Yeah, just a quick thought first on the environment yesterday. That was, I mean, it was floor to ceiling.
Yeah,
Once again, this was a holiday game. The students got out of school yesterday, and it was like
the high
everybody
school
at
students did. Yeah, Purdue students were gone last week, but yeah, go ahead.
yes, the Purdue students are gone. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
I thought it was I have my academic calendar mixed up in my head.
You
Um,
got a family to deal
I'm
with.
protracting my daughter onto every student of any kind in Tibby
Yeah.
County. No, so it was like everybody at that game was at every game this year because all of the stuff was in unison. It was like the same crowd has been at every game this year, and I didn't see any empty seats.
No.
Normally this time of year, it's there's a couple of no shows. People have Christmas shopping to do. People have holiday parties to go to. People just don't go. Sometimes the weather's not great. But it was the opposite yesterday. You would have thought yesterday it was a Big Ten game, and it was a
Yeah.
6:30 start.
Yeah,
And
they were all there
they,
too, right?
they started a half hour earlier than normal, and everybody was there by 6:15.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, it just speaks volumes to the culture around this program. And I keep saying this, and I keep having to qualify it with the elephant in the room. But yes, Purdue needs to win in March. But when you look at what they've done in the non-conference season, when you look at the support, when you look at the home floor environment, this is the body of work of an elite program. And but yes, I have to qualify everything I ever say that's positive with the elephant in the room. That is the fact that they do have to validate things a little bit in the court of public opinion by having some additional March success after what's happened the last 3 years. Never mind what happened before that, because that doesn't matter. As long as it's out of sight, out of mind, it doesn't matter. Anyway, Tom's question was what has to fall in place for Purdue to basically have the season it's capable of having. I think they're right on schedule. I think that Braden Smith has taken the step that I was telling people 8 months ago he was going to take while now all the national media swoops in like they just discovered the kid. I think that Purdue needed to be a better shooting team this year, and so far so good. And it's not like they're shooting great against bad teams. The schedule was the greatest non-conference schedule in school history. If there's a tougher one in college basketball this year, I'll be damned if I know who it is. They're shooting well. That obviously is something that can always bottom out on you at the wrong time, but there's no red flags there. I think top to bottom, Purdue's shooting the ball well. I think they're taking the right shots. I think maybe Lance Jones, from a volume perspective, is the one guy who will level off in time and settle in a little bit more. But he's new, right? I mean, that's part of what I'm getting at with this team overall, is that I think the last 2 Novembers, you probably saw Purdue's peak in November or December. I think this year, I don't think you've seen Purdue's peak, because this team was newer than people acknowledged when the season started. Yeah, they've got everybody back, but you're moving Trey Kaufman-Renn into the starting lineup. You got Lance Jones, who's a starter and one of your better players, who's brand new to the program. You got Miles Colvin and Camden Heide coming in as newcomers who add an element that you did not have prior. This was a much newer team than I think people realized, and that they went out that they went out to Honolulu and won that thing. That was a sign that Purdue is way ahead of schedule. And I think, as I said, the last 2 Novembers, especially 2 years ago, I think Purdue peaked in the preseason. And now I think there's still real upside to this team. I think Lance Jones is going to keep settling in. He's got to get better defending off the ball. I think there's still a settling in period for him with his place in the hierarchy of shot taking and things like that. I think Miles Colvin and Camden Heide are going to keep getting better and better and better and crystallizing into really defined roles. I think Trey Kaufman-Renn has shown you what he's capable of doing. It's just a matter of maybe getting him a little bit more involved one way or another without getting away from your bread and butter, which is obviously Braden Smith and Zach Edey. I think Fletcher Lawyer has really played well lately. Even when his scoring numbers haven't been what everybody wants them to be, I think he's taken a modest step from last season. I think he was really good last season. I think the issue is turnovers. I think that's the thing that every single game, in high stakes games at least, I think that's the thing that has already cost Purdue a game, and is the thing that if you get careless or you get overly confident, or you just want style points, things like that, or your attention to detail just isn't what it needs to be. I think that's the thing that can get you beat. It probably has to happen in conjunction with something else. But nevertheless, when you look at the situations where somebody has rallied from a big deficit on Purdue, be it Arizona, be it Marquette, or the game Purdue lost, Northwestern, it was turnovers. I just think that's something that, Braden Smith is a big part of it, but that's something he needs to set a tone for this entire team with. Zach Edey, obviously people are going to throw bodies at him. And there are going to be games where things happen and whatnot, but I think that Purdue just taking care of the basketball, making great decisions, taking the right shots, just maintaining possessions is going to be the single biggest key to their season from here on out, provided the shooting just doesn't go to hell, which there's no reason to believe it will.
I would agree with that. One thing about that statement of that it's turnovers in conjunction with something else. Even the Northwestern game, it was Boo Buie and a couple others shooting out playing out of their minds, and and making shots that they hadn't been making. Not Buie necessarily, but some of the other guys in Northwestern's roster.
Well, that's the other part of it, is Purdue's got to be ready for all these mediocre teams in the Big Ten
to play like they always,
to play their absolute best game of the season against Purdue. It's already happened once. It's going to happen again. Against somebody, and that's just heavy lies the crown when you're number one and when you're the obvious Big Ten front runner. Things like that. So Purdue's going to get some games where it's going to get pretty hairy, and that's where Purdue's maturity and its professionalism and its execution and its ability to take care of the basketball and do little stuff and things like that, and really, really ride its assets is going to come into focus.
Yeah. I think, you look at the Big Ten schedule and teams like Maryland that have not played as well as some people thought they would. Michigan State, I know they beat Baylor. They looked a lot better. But you're right. Those are the Indiana. Obviously, Indiana played Kansas to the wall, but then also barely could beat Morehead State. Though I have to admit, when Morehead State came into Mackey Arena,
Yeah, no
they were
doubt.
impressive. They were decent, and they
No
were a
doubt.
dangerous team. A team you would want to play in that first game of the tournament would be challenged. But my point is, yeah, there's going to be something there. There's going to be a team out there that may have been underachieving or has their perfect night that against Purdue, and it'll be interesting to see. One other thing I thought yesterday, and you guys, I'm interested just from a team dynamic standpoint, that was fascinating, somewhat fascinating to me. I was sitting with the Neubert clan in the last 4 minutes of the game, and we were down there talking. But I'm watching those guys, the absolute end of the bench, run the offense, play like they're supposed to play. I understand that the game gets ragtag, but I thought that was also kind of a further confirmation of just how well this program, how disciplined it is, how it does what it's supposed to do. Yeah, I know Will Berg had 100 dunks down the stretch, and so did others, but I was just really impressed with Carson Barrett's been there for a long time, has done good things, but all the way on down the line, they still kind of played the same way that they did at the end in a ragtag game that the other guys, the mainstay guys, do that throughout the course of the game.
I think that
yeah.
I think that those guys at the end of the bench take things really seriously, and they have to. I mean, that's your scout team, and that's the group that makes things better. But I think you got a bunch of coaches' kids. I think you have a bunch of former players' kids. You have guys who take basketball seriously and prepare like they're going to play, and whose personalities are really good for this team. Carson Barrett's a good player.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of places in college basketball he could be playing, including a lot of these teams that have come into Mackey Arena for these bye games. He could be playing for these teams. And I don't mean just like on the team. I mean like playing. He's a legitimately good player. And I think he's going to be a real asset for Purdue one day when he's on their coaching staff in some capacity, because I think he's an absolute natural for it. He's a great teammate. I think Chase Martin's really good for this team. His personality seems to be very, very conducive to a pleasant locker room environment. Obviously, he's got connections in basketball and kind of grew up around the game. And I think Will Berg. I don't know Will Berg from Adam, whatever that means, but people just say it. But he strikes me as a guy, and I've heard people talk about this, is that he is kind of like Zach Edey's just plaything in practice. He's there to get banged on, and he's what Matt Harms was to Caleb Swanigan years back when Harms was redshirting. And I don't think Will Berg has really been content with that. I think he wants to be something more. And obviously that's not going to happen anytime soon because he's got the National Player of the Year in front of him. But I think when he gets out there, he wants to show that he's not just a practice guy. And, I think he has shown himself to be a real prospect for Purdue long term. I mean, every time you go out there and you produce in consequence-free time, I mean, you could just stand there and it wouldn't matter. But he goes out there, he executes for a 7'3" guy. He shows some explosiveness. He shows some mobility. He seems to try really hard. He's really established himself as a guy who I think, Purdue's obviously got something to work with here. And I was always skeptical of him because I just figured Purdue can't keep hitting on these guys, because when you take guys this big, the batting average is normally probably pretty bad. And it was only a matter of time before Purdue just recruited a bad player. And when he first got to campus, he was very limited, but he was also very out of shape because he moved from, Sweden over here and hadn't been training for a while. And apparently this bone spur was like, I'm trying to think of an analogy here. When somebody's freed of something, it just completely transforms them. But this bone spur was apparently the worst bone spur in history. And it's something that probably ought to be in the Smithsonian based on the way people talk about it. But as soon as that thing came out of his foot, all of a sudden he was moving better, he was faster, he was quicker, and it just changed him. And I think that's been part of the way Purdue's been closing games too, is you have a guy here who's taking this stuff really seriously and is a good player and something Purdue can work with here in the future. But yeah, no, I think those end of the bench guys have been really good for Purdue this season, and that's part of a winning team, and is those guys at the end of the bench who aren't playing, or those guys who are playing who aren't playing as much as they might otherwise be playing. And Purdue's got a bunch of those guys on this team too, and don't want to deprive them of the credit here they deserve. When it's a harmonious environment and Purdue's winning, the harmonious environment is part of the reason Purdue's winning, and that's just a really good situation to be in, and something that should endure this season as long as Purdue's winning. Now, when things go sideways, that's the ultimate test of how this is going to go. But I don't see any red flags whatsoever in terms of the collective harmony of this team.
All right, what's the parable or whatever? It's when the bear gets the thorn taken out of his
It's a lion.
his
I think
foot.
it's a
Or
lion.
a lion. It's a lion, right? Lion, bear,
A
whatever.
bear might have taken the thing out of his foot. I don't remember what animal it
No,
was.
it's a lion, right? And
Yeah, but I don't remember who removed it.
I think I don't know, but somebody did, and there's probably very little parallel, but I'm sure somebody's going to call us on that, but we'll find out before the end of that, not end of this, but
Might have been a ferret or
maybe,
something. It was,
yeah, I don't know, but
I don't know.
Wilberg's better without bone spurs. That we know that, and I think
12 years of Catholic school, you'd think I'd know this.
And Tom and I, with that great West Side education, it hasn't gotten me anywhere. So it has gotten us both somewhere. Tom, we're going to switch a little bit here to culture, and Brian Walters trying to build that with a good, very good class, at least from a ranking standpoint. I know On3 had it at 32nd. The other networks maybe a little bit higher, but just your notion of the 25 person class, and then there's still some things that are going to continue to evolve. But how do you feel Ryan Walters felt about not only, I mean, they always talk enthusiastically about their classes, but deep down inside, I think they had to sound like they're pretty pleased to keep it is pretty well intact. And coming to West Lafayette, some of them here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I mean, they really, I think, did a good job at least bolstering the offensive line, which is, I think, a real area they wanted to address, and they've added some good depth, at least it looks like at least depth, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have 3 portal offensive linemen coming in. I think the best of those 3 is going to be the kid from Ball State, Corey Stewart. I expect him to start maybe at left tackle. And then on Wednesday, they signed 6 offensive linemen, 4 high school kids, and then 2 junior college transfers. And add all up, guys, that's 9 offensive linemen that can be brought in the fold here for 2024. And I think there's a chance maybe another portal lineman could come aboard too, maybe. So yeah, a lot of beef up front to bolster depth, like I said. And wide receivers got 4 wideouts. I don't know, they have a true standout among those groups, but they got some bodies to work with there. They got 1 portal wideout, Cam Brown from UCLA. He's got 1 year of eligibility. And I think they're going to get 1 more portal wide receiver. Maybe get the kid from Wake Forest, Jamal Banks. If they could, that'd be a huge coup. But again, I expect 1 more portal wideout. And yeah, then you look at always getting the quarterback, right? Marcos Davida, he's the quarterback they got early. Those quarterbacks always commit early. He's a big guy. He's going to get here, like I said, in January. And heck, Purdue's already got its 2025 quarterback committed a while ago. Sawyer Anderson, another kid from Texas. So yeah, I think overall, they have to be fairly pleased with what they brought in. Like I said, offensive line and the running backs, and also the secondary. That's probably the 3rd position that really stood out, just the numbers they signed back there. Luke Williams from Illinois, a big-time guy a lot of people wanted. And then I think the real cornerstone, the real, I guess, star, if you will, you want to call him recruit a star, is Corey Beasley from LaSalle High School in Cincinnati. He's the highest rated commit they've got, according to On3. Not the biggest guy in the world, but he's going to bring an element of speed that has been sorely missing in the back end. He's not going to get here early, but he could be special. And Beasley can help him as a punt returner as well. And I was talking to some coaches Wednesday, and sounds like there's a chance he's going to play on offense too. It was interesting when we got the press release before Ryan Walters' press conference, they listed Beasley just as an athlete. But again, he's a safety really by trade, and a guy who can fill a lot of roles for him, and a guy people should certainly want to keep a watch on here moving forward.
Yeah, I think so. You know, Brian, I'm going to ask you after I like to have you explain Androcles, but I think you're right. You did find about the
I
line that
just looked it up.
I know
Androcles
you and Tom's
was a
answer was very,
slave. He was a slave who came upon a struggling lion and
yeah.
rescued the lion despite his fear of being eaten by the lion. And then they, I think, as the story goes, they went on to share adventures together. And who
And
doesn't
Will
like
Berg,
adventures? Who doesn't like
maybe
adventures?
Zach Eady and Will Berg, you know, he's gonna follow in his footsteps. Brian, we've had and I think Tom's point is we've had some discussion. We had discussion at lunch yesterday at our wonderful sponsor Ripple about the importance of recruiting classes and high school recruiting classes in this world of transfer portal. I got the sense, and I'm watching, and Tom's a heck of a lot closer to watching Ryan Walters and his body language and how he handles things. But I do think he's took some. You got to take pride in your class anyway, by design. But I sense he had a little bit more of a. There was something about the way he talked about his class that I don't know if it put more importance to it. Obviously, the transfer portal is going to be a big issue, but he still seems to be a guy that is trying to build a foundation in a sometimes rudderless world of college football. How did you observe it not only at the press conference but just looking at the landscape?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, coaches are going to always say that high school recruiting is really important, but the reality of it is that, you know, as I wrote in my column the other day, of the 2,000 kids or whatever it is who probably signed Division I, probably more than that, 2,500, 3,000, you know, you're going to see thousands of these guys at some point in the portal, and a lot of them in like 8 months. But you still have to go try to sign the best players you can, and then you got to try to retain them. And but I think the portal is more important nowadays than the high school ranks are. It's important to get, if I'm being realistic about this, get 6 to 8 guys every high school recruiting class that you can develop, you can hold on to, get the Dylan Thienemans of the world, get the, you know, whoever it would have been from this past season, hold on to them, develop them, make those guys a big part of your culture, make those guys a big part of your program. They will represent the continuity within your program, which I still think matters. So you get 6 guys per recruiting class, 6 to 8 guys over 4 classes, 5 classes, whatever that is. That's the bulk of your roster. And then you pick and choose thereafter from the portal. And you just trade your rank and file every year for somebody else's rank and file. And that's probably the way it's going to go at a place like Purdue, where you are going to be hard pressed to get the best of the best transfers every year. But you can, if you can identify the right kind of middle of the pack sorts of guys who can be in your program for either make an immediate impact for 1 year or be in your program for 2 or 3 years and, you know, become something more than they might look in the very little frame of reference you have when you recruit them, great. I think what people don't realize too about the transfer market is that everybody looks at it like it's all about immediate need. You got to get a guy who can play left tackle for you right now. But every program still needs sophomores and juniors. So these guys like Joey Tanona, who you're going to have in your program for a few years, and you can work with them, that matters. That really matters, too, because you got to have players on your team. It can't all be freshmen and seniors. I think the teams that do the best job identifying somebody else's departing freshman or somebody else's departing redshirt freshman or departing sophomore, I think there's real value in that too. Now, how you do that, that's why coaches get paid so much, is because if a guy didn't play at Ole Miss or a guy didn't play at Michigan State, how the hell do you know what they can do? Unless you're just taking somebody's word for it, unless you really, really recruited the hell out of that kid and then paid attention to what was going on, or there's some sort of circumstance that you think, held him back. But also anytime you can get like a first team All MAC player like Purdue did in Corey Stewart, I think that's a good deal because I think those lower level guys moving up are a little extra motivated. This is kind of their big shot. This is their big shot to play professionally. This is their big shot to be on national TV for the first time in their careers. This is their first and only opportunity to make NIL money, stuff like that. And I think that's still a big part of where you need to go too. Now, all these guys get over recruited too. I don't know what Corey Stewart in particular's picture was, but we saw this years ago when the graduate transfer became a thing. Your best ability is availability, and I think that these guys probably get recruited at a level that maybe there's an imbalance between the interest they draw and their actual body of work at the places they're coming from. But that's just kind of part of it. But I think on paper, Purdue did really well so far in the transfer market. Now, you got to get receivers. I mean, somebody's got to catch a damn ball, and you have to make sure that this Hudson Card window you have here is maximized. And you can't do that if nobody can catch the ball. I think Purdue's receiver play this past year left much to be desired. And I think that held the offense back in certain instances. That's got to get fixed one way or another. And that's, Tom can speak to this more than I can, but that's the next part of this here.
Yeah, there's still some of those.
What did
out
you even
there,
ask
Tom.
me?
Yeah. I don't know.
What did you even ask me? I just talked for like 10 minutes.
No, I asked about just the whole notion of how the importance of high school recruiting versus portal and
Yeah. It is important, but it's less important than ever before. But that doesn't mean it's not important.
Tom,
Okay,
your chance,
move on.
Tom, and I think your chance to be around the assistant coaches a little bit, and just in terms about Purdue's ability to sell the product, and that also means getting portal guys in here. Ryan Walters obviously has a personality. Maybe you can speak a little bit about some of the assistant coaches that just the environment around recruiting and their emphasis on it. I mean, you have to give them some credit that the numbers, at least if you look at the rankings, considering where Purdue has been in the marketplace, is pretty impressive in terms of what kind of class they were able to bring in. But you've been around them a little bit. Sales guys that just good nuts and bolts football guys are going to attract kids. What do you see from that standpoint?
It's a relatively young staff, so I think they connect pretty well with these recruits, which certainly helps on the visits, they've certainly tried to cultivate a youthful, exciting, energetic vibe, a very player-friendly vibe.
Yeah.
From what I can gather. So that's got to resonate with the 17, 18-year-old kids that they're recruiting. But long story short, people want to play, they want to be developed, they all think they can play in the NFL. I think those things matter too. And I think Ryan Walters' background on defense, especially in the secondary, certainly helped them attract some very, very intriguing players here in this 2024 class. And certainly, remember last year, guys, they had a pretty short window to try to get a class together. They had to secure the commitments they had, and then they had to go out. They didn't even have a press conference last December, and they had their presser in February. So went out and signed a few more guys to sort of fill out that class. So it was basically put together on the fly. Even the portal, too, they didn't have the kind of money they have this year, too. So they were a little hamstrung shopping out of the portal and still got some productive guys. So you get the sense now, we saw the fruits of being able to work for 12 months in advance, what they were able to do in high school. We saw the fruits of a more robust collective, what that can get them in the portal. And so I think there's obviously a very overall positive energy and vibe, again, coming out of the old Kozich Football Performance Complex. The challenges are many. You guys know that. Look at that schedule for next year. I think Oregon, Penn State, and Notre Dame are three of the teams coming to West Lafayette, and that's just a start, right? So it's going to be a brave new world in the Big Ten in 2024 with 18 teams, right? And so, yeah, no divisions. Everybody lined up 1 to 18. You better have a pretty solid roster if you want to try to stay relevant in the Big Ten moving forward here.
Yeah, and then of course you throw in road games at Ohio State and Oregon State as well. I mean, it's daunting. All right, since this will likely be our last simulcast of the year, Brian, I wanted you to. It's not Androcles. I think it's Nostradamus or whoever was predicting the future. I know you're not guaranteeing a national championship for Matt Painter and company, but what will be is obviously the 2024 NCAA tournament's going to be one of the big storylines. But what, as you look ahead to the next year, outside of getting on a plane and go to Maryland and Nebraska the first 2 weeks of the year, what are some of the things that intrigue you about what you'll see in 2024? And Tom, you get to prepare after this. I'm going to turn around and ask you the same question. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I just think Purdue's got to take it one day at a time. I mean, you can't just fast forward ahead to the NCAA tournament. As much as fans and national media and whatnot want to talk about that, and we'll talk about that, and Twitter reply guys, every single tweet about Purdue is going to have people on there trolling. But you just got to worry about the Big Ten first. And to have a team like this, if you don't win the Big Ten, that would be something lamentable, if that's a word. But then I think, as I've said ever since the end of last season, like last season wasn't Purdue's shot. This season is Purdue's shot because you have older guards who've been through it. Now, I didn't know right away after last season that Zach Edey would be back, but now that you've got Edey, you've got a higher ceiling team that I think is still getting better, and you've got older guards. Now, when I say older guards, not as old as what Purdue will see in the NCAA tournament, because, between the transfer portal and COVID years you've still got people running out 24, 25-year-old guards, and Purdue's already lost to one this season. I look forward to the day when college basketball is again played by kids and not grown-ups. But I think Purdue is in great shape come March. Obviously there's a lot of season left. Purdue's got to stay healthy. Purdue's got to keep getting better. I think that's the most important part of the rest of the season, is that Purdue keeps getting better and keeps kind of settling into this relatively new mix they have. But for as new as that mix is, what more could you have done in November, December than you did? You lost one game in double overtime on the road in the Big Ten that you should have won, but you didn't. So maybe that's out of Purdue's system. But I think that Purdue's got as good a shot as anybody. And I predicted before the season they'd make the Final Four. And I don't see any reason to retract that at this point. I think they're the best team in college basketball. And I still think they're getting better, as I keep saying over and over again. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
well, that's somewhere.
It's going to come down to, like, as I always say this about Big Ten races, like, it's not beating Michigan State on Sunday afternoon on CBS. It's not showing up at Nebraska on a Wednesday night, things like that. But you've seen no red flags from Purdue. I mean, all of these bye games they've played, they've taken care of business. They've throttled those teams as they should. You have an overmatched team against Xavier coming in, didn't mess around. Obviously you weathered some really, really difficult circumstances in Hawaii in terms of the buzzsaws you kind of ran into a couple times with Gonzaga and some other people, and you obviously got buzzsawed to start the game at Alabama. Showed enough wherewithal, enough maturity against a team full of adults again to come back and win that game. And I just don't see many red flags with this team.
Fair enough. All right, Tom, is football, it is going to be really an interesting storyline, not only spring ball, but also heading into a season where, you after 4 wins, you'd like to get yourself back to 6, 7 wins, but you look at that schedule again, as you mentioned in your last answer, is that that's going to be a heck of a challenge to even get to when you're going to be a decided underdog in at least 4 of those games and maybe 5, and then you still have other teams that are at your peer level that you're going to have to be able to beat. what is reasonable looking ahead, or what are you going to watch for that may show a sure sign of improvement in this program?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to get to a bowl next year, right?
Yeah.
I think that was right there for the taking this last year. The September schedule just they didn't do a lot of people thought they needed to do in September. Taking care of business with all those home games. So, yeah, Alan, like you said, it's going to be a challenge. I thought 6-6, 7-5 last year, would have been a reasonable expectation. I got to think that the range is probably going to be about the same this year. If they can get 6 wins, 7 wins, in my eyes, that would be considered a success.
Yeah.
I think coming off this 4-8 season, like I said, they've got to get to a bowl. They got to continue to show progress. Ryan Walters has certainly been effusive in his praise of the fans for showing up this year, right?
Yeah.
Some of those crowds
Huge
late,
story.
especially that Minnesota crowd, they certainly supported this team through a lot of thin this year in October and November. And I think they're really motivated to reward those fans for showing up. So, and again, the best way to do it, you got to win. It's pretty simple. And yeah, I think the pressure starts now, right? I think the honeymoon is certainly over. And the timetable for turnarounds, as you guys know, it's pretty much evaporated in college sports. We all want it now, and if you believe the players coming in, how the roster is going to be improved, you got a veteran quarterback as well. Even though they're playing a daunting schedule, I think people are going to expect this team, like I said, to get to the postseason one way, shape, or form. So you got to figure out some way to get to 6 wins. But again, that non-conference schedule, guys, Indiana State, Oregon State, Notre Dame. I mean, Purdue certainly never does himself any favor in the non-conference, and just makes that much more challenging for whoever's coaching the Boilermakers.
Yeah, going to be an interesting in keeping that crowd. That having Notre Dame at home is for the first time in a long time, dating back to 2013. I believe that's right. That will make a big difference too, as the Fighting Irish come back to West Lafayette for the first time.
Can I
All
say
right,
something real
guys.
quick?
Yeah, you may.
Yeah, no, I wrote this a couple weeks ago, but I think that with the way these super conferences are going, at some point might need to reassess the definition of success. Like, you're getting to a point with the Big Ten now where half of these teams, and I'm including Purdue, but I'm not saying this is just Purdue. It's Illinois, it's Minnesota, it's Wisconsin and Iowa are at risk, certainly Indiana, Northwestern. Like, how do you win 8 games anymore in this league when you open up with 5 games on your schedule right off the bat that you are going to be significant underdogs in, and who are almost always going to out recruit you, are almost always going to out NIL you and things like that. And it's a really difficult landscape. I'm not saying
Now,
this.
then how do you define success?
Yeah. It's going to be hard.
Well, I think
trying hard.
Yeah.
I think we need to get to the point where the Bulls can just do whatever the hell they want, and they can. There's no real.
Just everybody schedule a 13th game. It's kind of silly then.
Well,
Yeah.
the TV networks are doing whatever the hell they want with college football anyway. So why not just let the Bulls just take a 4-win Purdue team over a 6-win Louisiana Tech team? Like,
and then you think people can go because they're going to a bowl and they're 4-7, that's going to be cool and successful.
well, that's the standard for success right now, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
if you go to a bowl, you've had a successful season.
But at least you've gone 6-6.
Yeah.
Well,
Hey,
is 6-6 success? That's not a winning
Yeah.
season. That's you.
But
won
that
as many
may be
games as
what
you
they're going to
lost.
get to.
That's been the absurdity of all of this in college football
Yeah.
for the last few years. Like, just breaking even, is that really success? Like, I mean, is the Little Caesars Bowl success?
I guess you think 4-7 is a success. So
well,
Yeah.
success doesn't matter anymore.
Bowl.
TV ratings do, and TV money does. And
well, somebody's got to win. Somebody's got to lose.
Yeah.
Right,
But
and
if you
Look at the
deck is gonna
NFL.
be
Look at the
significantly
NFL. Somebody's
stacked
got to win.
against-
Somebody's got to lose.
right.
Yeah. Well, I think too, one thing that's going to change, which will be interesting, and this can go for another conversation, but the fact that you got 12 teams going to the playoff, and I you have to wonder too, if some of these some of these other bowls, what will happen to that, and where, yes, if people still continue to watch between Christmas and New Year's, you'll continue to have them, but I think the definition of it is going to be is changing, just because, not only because of schedule, but because of the 12 teams that are going to be in these playoffs, of which yes, it'll be very, very difficult if Purdue will ever be in that conversation. But
I never in a million years ever would have thought I'd get emails from people saying that Purdue needs to get out of the Notre Dame series.
Yeah.
And I have, because people are looking at these schedules and realizing that just what they're up against here. Yeah. And it's just kind of the nature of it nowadays. 6-6 is now like contract extension time. That's like lifetime contract extension type of stuff at a place like Purdue, at a place like Illinois. I mean, shit, hell.
Stuff.
Stuff. What chance does Illinois have moving forward? What chance does Minnesota have? You are just cashing checks, and you're sort of becoming, I don't want to say you're becoming the buy games, but if you win 5 games against the schedule next year, you've succeeded. There's no question in my mind, you've succeeded. Now, are people generally going to look at that as success? I think they should, but they probably won't, because there won't be a bowl game at the end of it. You won't get to go to the Micron PC Bowl in Glendale, Arizona, to play Marshall.
Yeah, I think all of it's going to be, be really interesting to see whether on that, the whole definition of it, it does come down to, you got to keep, we talked about this yesterday at lunch, that you have to keep people coming to games, and you got to keep competitive balance somehow. And all those factors are going to be storylines to watch in 2024, to say the least, and whether Purdue can start to take that step. And I agree that, like Tom, we're talking about the whole notion of you had a chance this year to win 6 or 7 games, no question. They didn't, and yet that margin for error is razor thin sometimes. So agreed. All right, guys, we're gonna put a close to this. I think we buy extended Zoom here, so we could go on for hours, but we appreciate all of a lot of conversation today, a lot of things to think about as we move ahead to 2024. I want to thank our sponsor, the Union Club Hotel, and the Boiler Up Bar, and Leap's Coffee, and of course the 11 Bistro Restaurant. Want to thank also you, our viewers, and our people that, as Brian will point out, and Tom as well, that we do actually write things. The people that take in our information the way that they do. We appreciate you as well. We're thankful for all of you, and wish you the best, not only for a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and however you celebrate the holidays, do so safely. And we're grateful for you, because we would not be who we are without you, the reader, the subscriber, but also the folks that take in all of our information. So again, thanks again to all. Have a great holiday all, and we'll see you on the backside, or the front side, I should say, of 2024. There'll be a lot going on that as Purdue men's basketball hits the ground running with that, and Big Ten play. Illinois that first weekend as well, coming to Mackey Arena on the 5th of January. So have a great week, everyone. A great holiday, and we'll see you in our next edition of Saturday Simulcast.